Hey everybody, young Grasshopper here. Welcome to the Cliffside Bunker in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this is my solo run-through game. We're playing 3G40 Tournament Edition. And in this episode, we're going to do round one, Japan. Japan up next. And let's go to the comments of the last video. Comments in the last video. So Jack Sarles, hey young Grasshopper, it appears to me that this new tournament edition has made the Pacific side of the board easier for the Allies. Pearl Harbor is no longer an objective for the Axis. It is not true that taking Hawaii for Japan is no longer a critical victory move. Even though it was worth 5 IPCs, it no longer triggers victory in the Pacific side. A smart US player could just focus on holding on to Sydney, which lets UK Pacific focus all their manpower on Calcutta. Since Hawaii is no longer a victory objective, this US only needs to protect Sydney instead of both Sydney and Pearl Harbor. I know they also need to protect San Francisco, but it's pretty easy to see that coming and stop it with a 10 stack of infantry. So I'm not really sure if Jack understands the victory points in the game. I mean, Hawaii does come into play, but not along the same reasons as out of box. So Hawaii is one of the American islands that Japan can take to get that Pacific token. But even in out of box, I didn't even really think that Hawaii was that big of a get for Japan. I mean, obviously they need the 6 victory cities on the Pacific side to win. I never liked the victory conditions in out of box. You guys all know that. I mean, you could be really, really strong in the Pacific or Europe, and then really, really weak and down to your last territory on the other side, and the Axis could still win. Really polarizes the game from one side of the map to the other. But anyway, Hawaii, I mean, there's lots to do in this variant when it comes to the Pacific Islands, and I'll explain that when I get into my Japan turn 1 here. So Peter Fleck, I have 3 players in Buffalo, New York. When the border opens up, let's go. I've never been opposed to having strangers at my bunker to play a game, so yeah, that's definitely doable. Keep in touch. Christopher Wilson, and it's enjoyable to hear you address comments from the previous video. Added anticipation for sure. Thanks, Christopher. I think this is really cool. Make it interactive, and you know, we'll see how it goes. I may not be able to read all the comments, but especially if I spend a long period of time between videos and the comments keep racking up, but I'll try and address as much as I can. Thanks for the thumbs up, Dark Angel. Really appreciate it. Dark Angel does that quite a bit. Just sends me a thumbs up, keeps me motivated. It's definitely inspiring just to get anything from anybody that I'm doing a good job. Bill Calloway, again, I've watched over 100 hours of Axe and Ally strategy videos. This is very well done because you are explaining every single strategy. I'm really looking forward to see how this turns out. I might have bought 3 tanks for UK Pacific because I'm never save your money kind of guy. However, I can see why you wouldn't do that too. I always have eyelashes on my game board too. So during the video, he spotted that I saw a little tiny eyelash or hair on my board, and I tried to pick it up while I was shooting the video. So it's gonna be something where this table just gets dirty. When I break down a game and the pieces, I always wipe it down with like a Lysol wipe and everything, try to vacuum out the dice boards and everything. I can't do that just simply because the pieces in the game's got to stay set up through all these videos. So the basement here is funny because I don't think that they've cleaned out their ducts, because I get a lot of lint coming from the vents So it does land in my trays and on my table. So this is probably going to be really filthy when I'm done. So we'll have all kinds of lint and hair and dust all over the board. But thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for the comments. So we're going to get into Japan Turn 1. There's a lot to talk about. You guys have realized that my videos so far have been long. And I think it's just more that I'm explaining the rules, I'm explaining the concepts, different strategies, philosophies for each nation, different things that they can do. I think it's important that this not just be a move, finish, collect money and go. I think it's going to be chronicling good information for a lot of people that want to get into this variant, and of course those that are practicing for my tournament edition. So Japan, we're going to talk a lot about everything that they can do. We're going to get into moving their units, rolling dice, and just overall what to do with Japan in this new variant. So Japan Turn 1 coming up. Be right back. Okay, so Turn 1 Japan in this 3G40 Tournament Edition. Just want to also mention that Graham Martin made a comment. He answered my question about where I may have missed that fighter in Germany Turn 1. I don't know why it didn't come up in the comments when I was in my studio there, but maybe because it had a timeline. But at the 42 mark, he showed me that when I was placing my new units, I didn't put enough on. So thanks for that, Graham. Really appreciate it. I also like that Bill Calloway mentioned that he's watched that many strategy videos, and I think that it's just cool that he views this as a strategy video. It's just not another YouTube Wars video, and you'll see how much I talk about Japan. So there's a lot to these videos when it comes to what players can gain. So strategy, yes. Rolling out and doing the fundamental resolve combat phase like battle board stuff, and also just tips and tricks and tidbits and things. So it's kind of a overall type video series. So let's get into Japan and what they're going to do. Let's talk about where their mindset should be. I mean, obviously they're dealing now with this large or combined UK Pacific with national objectives and a lot of money. And they also have an opportunity now to hit some Russians, because the Russians go further down in the order of play sequence in this variant. So those 6 in Amur are vulnerable. And Japan's got a lot of decisions to make Turn 1 here. And I would even go so far as saying that the consequences for those decisions are even more emphasized. Now, I've had a lot of play tests, and it's kind of hard to explain to you guys the implications of what's going on over here in Europe and how much it affects Japan. I mean, we're going to see, of course, what America does Turn 1, but they're out of the war right now. But if they get an opportunity to come in here to Morocco with a large landing force, or even just a medium-sized landing force, it could mess up the plans to get the North Africa token. Now, I had mentioned in Germany Turn 1 that the Africa token is what I'm going for. And it looks like the German Turn 1, it looks like they're nicely poised to help Italy with that. Of course, we have to see what the United Kingdom, Europe does. But I'm explaining this because the J1 attack is essentially nerfed here. It's still possible and it can still be rewarding, but the battleship is no longer freely here to just go get. And the 2 ships here, and those were big units to get as part of the J1 attack and out of box. And of course the Philippines and Hong Kong. So there's lots that you would attack in the J1, and even possibly enough Navy to go after this Hawaiian fleet. Now, we have to ask ourselves, can we still do the J1? Well, we have these units here without a scramble, but this is more like a bait, because only these units can reach, and it's very close. I mean, we've got a 1 at 2, a 1 at 3, and a 1 at 4 against a 1 at 2, a 1 at 3, and a 1 at 4. This will absorb a hit, but so would the carrier. But do we want to sacrifice the carrier, a very important unit in our overall war effort, to take out these three and bring America into the war? And that's the thing, the consequences, bringing the Americans into the war. Now, in the tournament, I can guess that whether it's North Africa or Sea Lion, the European Axis powers are going to beg their teammate not to bring the Americans into the war turn one. And, you know, there's a lot of validity why that shouldn't happen. Now, I've got a friend that says, well, you got to take this out. You got to take this out while it's there, while it's vulnerable, because they'll reposition, so get them while they're vulnerable, and the battleship is no longer here. But also, too, I mean, there's a lot of implications when it comes to the national objectives you're going to be handing the UK Pacific, so that's a consequence. As well as bringing the Americans into the war that can really destroy all plans for the North Africa token, that is a consequence. So there's consequences to the decisions of Japan. Now, I'm not prepared to show you guys those things because I like to play a little bit tighter, a little bit more disciplined with Japan. I'm not going to try anything that I wouldn't normally do, I would say, in this case. So I'm not going to bring the Pacific Allies into the war. Now, I do have other hard decisions, but let's look at the points. The points are everything. The victory points are everything. I'll put a link in the description box of this video, sending you to a forum thread where you can see the list of 10 Allied objectives to get points and 10 Axis objectives to get points. And the reason why I bring that up is because when you get a point, you don't have to hold the objective. You can lose it right away. Like, for example, if Japan goes all out for Sydney and say round 3 or 4, they land in Sydney and they take New South Wales, they get a token. It doesn't matter if the Americans come in and destroy it and take it back and there's a liberation. They get the point and they score that point. And the same with Sea Lion, the same with Rome. You just get on it once. Doesn't matter what round in the game it is. And you get that point. They matter a lot in the final score at the end of 8 rounds. Let's take a look at Japan's possible points to get. We mentioned Sydney, but there's also the Asia token. So they hold India, Malaya, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. If they hold those 4 territories, they'll get the Asia token. If they control all Chinese originally controlled territories, all of them, they get a token. The Pacific token is very dynamic and interesting. I've seen people completely ignore it for both sides, but in our games, it's come into play quite a bit. I think it's a good get for the Allies. I think it's more possible for the Allies. The Japanese would have to spread themselves out, but it's there in case the Americans completely abandon the Pacific, do all of their buys on the Atlantic, and you know they have to watch for Japan taking the American islands. Now there's 8 originally controlled American islands, that's including Aleutian, and there's 8 originally controlled Japanese islands. And if one side lands on, controls all 8 of the enemy's islands, that's a token. So we have to keep all that in mind, and we have to decide as Japan, what are we going to do? What are we going to go for? Now, unlike Germany, where your first round move is a little bit more surgical, there's some things that can be done here in Japan that they can kind of take a little bit of liberty with. I would venture to say not to focus so much on getting a token for Japan right away, not like the way the European Axis are with that North Africa or a Sea Lion or even a Moscow Advance. It takes a lot more planning right from turn 1, especially on turn 2. But for Japan, what we want to do is just put ourselves in good position to get rich. I mean, even if Japan does not get any tokens on this side, but prevents all the allied tokens, but if they're making a lot of money, if they're rich, if they're destroying units, I mean, that is a good game for Japan. I mean, it's not something that great players might settle for. I mean, obviously what would be ideal is if Japan could get one token and prevent all the allies, or if Japan can get two of their tokens and the allies get only one. Or even if it's a tie over here, 1 for 1 or 0 for 0, I think Japan has done their job. But what would be great is if Japan doesn't give up 2, 3, even 4 allied tokens on their side. So what we need to do is we need to flex. We need to flex a lot. We need to get territories. We need to get rich. And hopefully turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, the picture becomes a little bit more clear on whether or not a token is possible for them. That's just my opinion. Now let's get into our combat movements, and still we got decisions, and our decisions have consequences. One, if we're going to attack the Pacific allies, it really hurts the European axis. So if you're going to attack turn 1, make sure you have a good reason to. Make sure that you can guarantee at least one token on this side by doing that. Also, too, just consequences like waiting too long. If Japan waits too long and attacks the Pacific allies, say the beginning of their turn 3, well, the consequence of that is that UK Pacific is going to collect a lot of money for national objectives. We might see that play out. But let's get into our combat movement now and see what I come up with. Let's look at our stage card. Again, we're going to go straight down to purchase new units, and what I've done here is something that I don't normally do, but I bought 3 transports. I usually buy, and I'm keeping $5 back. Bill Calloway might not like that. But I'm buying 3 transports. Now, I normally purchase 2 transports in a factory, and that's very, very doable. I mean, if I bought 2 transports in a factory, I wouldn't feel any differently about it than the purchase that I did, the 3 transports and the 5 IPCs back. But the reason why I didn't buy a factory this turn, which I almost 99% all the time do, is because I kind of want to wait. I don't want to handcuff myself, because once you put that factory on the board, it becomes a useless purchase if you don't fill it with 3 land units. So on turn 2, you're pretty much guaranteeing yourself to purchase 3 land units. Well, of course, that's fine. That's what the factory's there for. That's why we bought it, to build 3 land units. But, you know, by placing it down turn 1, you pretty much must put aside 3 units to purchase, just to fill up that factory, just to make it a worthy purchase. And I kind of don't want to pigeonhole myself in that sense. Now, I would almost venture to guarantee that I'll be buying a factory turn 2. But for now, I think a transport will do very similar, the same job as a factory, one way or the other. If you have other purchase suggestions, let me know. We have lots of aircraft, 21 aircraft to start. We have a large fleet. I know that we're going to be suffering for land units on the mainland eventually, but anyway, that's my purchase. And the cool thing about this is we're going to go into our combat movement, and we have 3 transports here. If we end up stripping all of this, and we don't want to make 3 transports vulnerable, especially if we do a J1 attack, then after doing all of our combat movements, we can change our purchase, because we're in stage 1. We move all of our combats. We can go back up and change our purchases after we've done our combat movement. Obviously, we want to do this in a good time frame, not take up all of our time, but we have that freedom to make those changes while we're in stage 1. Of course, when we go into stage 2, flip that card, we're not going to have any of those options anymore. So I'll be right back, guys. We'll move my units and do combat movement. I'm just going to tell you right now that I am not going to be attacking the US or the UK Pacific and bringing them into the war this turn. Be right back. Okay guys, so I have completed my combat movement for Japan, turn 1, and we are attacking 4 territories, 4 Chinese territories, and nothing else. So I did mention that we're not going to bring the Pacific Allies into the war, and I had a tough decision on whether or not I wanted to hit these 6 Russian units. Now, there's lots of reasons why I could and should hit those 6 units. For example, if the European Axis are focused on south or west, you don't want to give Russia too much real estate or space to just do whatever they want, and again eventually come back and haunt your teammates on that side. But there's some consequences as well. Sure, we would be taking out 6 units and be taking some Russian territories, but that would trigger the Mongolian rule. So for the 6 that we destroy, 6 are going to pop up. And it's not so much the numbers in that regard. It's just that when these pop up, you're giving the Russians better position to take away the China token. Now, I'm not saying I'm going for the China token. It might be something that manifests and becomes possible, especially if I get good rolls and the overall landscape allows for me to go for that hard. But we don't want to just automatically give up on the China token either right away by allowing these Russians to have good position to come inward and take away any of those Chinese territories. Right now, Mongolia is acting as a buffer that the Russians cannot go through. So 6 for 6, you could make the argument for that. But as far as options, as far as victory points are concerned, the Russians would be in a better position to help China not give up all their territories. So I'm going to leave that. Guys can explain in the comments why you would take that. But I've got these battles here. A lot of what I want to express strategy wise will be more in the non-combat movement, but just notice that I left an artillery here, left an artillery here, and things like that. I'm coming in with 3 infantry and an artillery on the road, with a tactical bomber and a fighter from Shanghai, and the 2 strategic bombers from Japan, Tokyo. And these 3 infantry only, I'm not bringing in the artillery, but 3 infantry only against these 2, with 2 fighters and 2 tactical bombers from Manchuria. So we're going to roll these out. I'm going to start with the road. I get 2 at 1, 2 at 2. Remember, combined arms. We're not going to battle board this, but combined arms, 2 at 2 because of the pairing with the artillery. And this is a 4 because of the pairing with the fighter. So 2 at 1, 2 at 2, 1 at 3, 3 at 4 against 4 at 2. So let's roll that out. So 2 at 1 for Japan, and we get a hit. It's great to get a clean sweep here, but even better if the Chinese don't hit. And of course, the reason why we want a first round clean sweep is that they don't get a second chance to roll a dice and get a hit. But 2 at 2 now, nothing. 1 at 3, nothing. Kind of didn't roll that very well. And 3 at 4. Oh, only 1 more hit. Terrible. So that's a great opportunity for China now. Let's square up. I'll try not to shake the camera too much. Let's square up here. 4 at 2 for China. one hit. Okay. So there's going to be a second combat round here. Not really what Japan wanted, but at least they only lose one unit. So let's continue now. We'll roll these properly. I'll try not to shake the camera and make you guys dizzy. Maybe hold it tight inward here. So 1 at 1. 1 at 1. No. 2 at 2. There's a hit. We only need one more. We need 1 at 3 for the fighter, and there it is. So 2 hits, and now China's going to return fire, and they get another infantry. That's about right. Would have ideally not wanted to give them that second combat round, and that's the reason why we need to do our best. Not like we can... I'm sorry, we'll do this. We'll take them right off. So we won that. That's not a lot left there. Up here, let's see how this goes. 3 at 1 and some aircraft. So 3 at 1, 2 at 3, and 2 at 4. 3 at 1, got one. 2 at 3, 2 hits, so that's all of them. And for China, 2 infantry at 2 or less, and they get 1. So not too bad for China. They get rid of a total of 3 land units from Japan, which is so much better than not hitting at all. So we got some losses in China. So those are the combats. Not much to talk about other than just we want to be lucky and have as many land units as possible on the mainland, because anything we lose in these battles we have to replace and then some. So let's get into our non-combat movement. Be right back. Okay guys, so I have finished my non-combat moves. Let's take a look. We are in stage 2 and we did our resolve combat obviously, and our non-combat moves are in. Let's take a look and see what I've done. So I've stripped Korea. I brought the 4 infantry into here. I left 2 infantry in Manchuria, brought a plane, the Korea plane there, and I've got 6 against 6. If Russia wants to come in and take Korea, that will negate the Mongolian rule, and I'm in good shape to defend anything from here. It'd be kind of silly for Russia to do that and negate the Mongolian rule, especially with the fighter there. I've brought 4 units from Manchuria in here. I brought the planes from Japan sitting there, and that's good northern force to just put pressure and possibly get these to pull back this way. Not saying that that's something we want, but it's fine if they do. They're either off Manchuria or making their way here, and we've got good pressure to continue our push into China. And I left this here because when we build our 3 transports, I want this artillery, this tank, and this artillery to be options for loaded transports. Now we moved these 3 in, sorry, from here, these 3 in during the combat movement, but we brought the units here down because we want to put pressure on Hong Kong if it's our plan to attack turn 2. We don't know yet. And I brought a couple of fighters here. We don't need the scramble up here for everything that people want to say about how much harder it is to play Japan. And it's true, it's challenging in this variant to play Japan, but there are positives, and one of the biggest positives is the fact that this UK Pacific are restricted from declaring war on Japan until the beginning of their 3rd turn. That's going to really allow Japan to just position any way they want without worrying that they're going to lose a lone transport to some aircraft with that option, that out-of-box option to declare war and attack. Also, too, that maneuver called the Sneaky Carl is not possible in this game. So without the multinational forces of ANZAC and UK Pacific, they can't put something in a C zone that would prevent the picking up of units and dropping them when Japan wants to do a combat movement. So that gambit is out, and I'll get into this here. But back on the mainland, we've got pressure now on Hong Kong for moving this down. I was kind of forced to bring this transport here. That's fine. We've got 2 units that can help in a counterattack, which is probably surely coming from the Chinese there. But this is not idle. I mean, it can come down here and pick up these 2 units and do something on an island or something perhaps, or even go back and position them better for our drive inland on China. We'll see what China does, but I'm comfortable with our positioning, especially knowing that these units cannot come in and declare war and help China yet, but we have to keep it in the back of our minds that that is there. And over here, I have positioned my home fleet around the Caroline Islands. There's no transports here, but all the muscle ships came around the Caroline. Now, the transport from Japan picked up an artillery, and the Iwo Jima infantry came down here. And this transport picked up the artillery only and came here, and that's going to complement a loaded transport with the infantry already here. Now, a lot of people might say, with this Pacific victory token for the Allies, do you really want to strip your islands? And I don't have a problem with it right now, because I can get away with that knowing that America, it's early. We don't know what America's going to do. Obviously, if they start threatening the islands, we'll have to do something about it. But I want to try and keep as many land units that can reach the mainland and stay on the mainland, just stay there. And if I can come down and make some use out of this infantry and this one from Iwo Jima, all right, and I'm sorry, this one picked up Okinawa, and then the artillery from Manchuria and came down from here. This one came here, and then the Tokyo transport. And I've got enough here to just basically dictate the options of my enemy. And I don't really recommend coming out here this far in later rounds, like 5, 6, 7. I mean, obviously we'll have to, but ideally how I like to play Japan is just stay tight, stay in, take body shots, deliver body shots to these islands and the mainland, and, you know, instead of just a Hail Mary to try and take out some fleet or whatnot, because I put a lot of importance on my own fleet as Japan. And again, we need to get rich, and to do that we need to take territories, islands, China, Malaya. Now, I'm not coming up here to take this money simply because they're spotted with 1 IPC value each. There's no national objective up here for me, and there's no real victory point or victory objective. Now, the reason why you might want to go after that 6 is to help out your European Axis partners, who are obviously dealing with the Mediterranean and possibly the Channel, and they may not be able to deal with getting Moscow depending on how that theater of war goes. And anytime you can help by taking out Russians, you know, but there's too many consequences to that, in my opinion, right now for what I want to do. But, you know, I think it leans in the favor of not taking out that 6, just simply because I'm strong in the north. I'm strong in the south with my aircraft. I've got good position here. Now, all this would not happen if I went up there and took out that 6, and the Mongolians popped up. All right. Now, like I said, I left this here for the 3 transports getting built. I got 3 powerful units to complement 3 infantry when they get on their horse and go. And ideally, I didn't want to lose that many land units in China. I know it's nothing to get upset about, but as Japan, we shouldn't be comfortable when we lose land units on the mainland. It could end up coming to haunt us if it compounds, and then China becomes a little too much, especially when a strong, rich Calcutta starts coming in to help them. And we'll see that the Russians might also come in and help. But we're in good position to continue our ground and pound there. We're in good position to force the hand of our enemies. For example, they've got to be worried for Sydney, even if it's a fake. They cannot ignore the fact that it's possible now for Japan to take this. They would have to make a decision to outstretch themselves and get down there and put their fleet really out of position. But we might force these to come back. And anytime we do that, for example, if these go back, instead of freely coming in and just building up with the San Fran fleet, they may still do that. They may still see that they can go ahead and bait them by going into Hawaii like that, and then these ships here would have a hard time with the odds. That might still happen, but we are putting pressure on them to make a tough decision. And plus, let's go ahead and do it now. Our 3 transports here, if they do abandon Hawaii, it's possible that if we attack in our turn 2, that we can go ahead and land in Hawaii if that's something we want to do. So all kinds of threats here. And I like the positioning just simply because our transports here can reach the coast. They can come down and take a couple of these high islands. This here can come and complement anything going this way. So good positioning. That fleet can reach anywhere along this coast. They can go back home from the Caroline Islands and regather. So now I see a lot of people just going ahead and placing their entire fleet right here. And I just think that, you know, that's just a sign that you're not sure what you want to do. We did that a lot in our first year or 2 playing this game, just simply because we didn't know what to do with our massive fleet turn 1. Obviously, this to me sounds better just because we're going to force the enemy and we're going to recreate their options, right? They don't want to take these planes home. They want to come here, but if Sydney is being threatened, they may have to. That might be the smart thing. All right, guys. So is there anything else I forgot to mention? Looking good. Not bad. Now, if I made a mistake or if I chipped out something or if I moved something incorrectly, please let me know in the comment section. And just thanks, guys, for watching. Thanks for being interested, and we'll see how this pans out. And I'm just having a lot of fun right now, and thanks for your participation in the comments. So until next time, we are going to get into the United Kingdom Europe round 1, UK Europe round 1. And you can see how 2 players can kind of be going at the same time. In this turn block, right, there's no significant interaction. Not so much. I mean, obviously there's the 2 infantry in Egypt. And this here, this turn block, and this one, and this one. So in a 4-player game, 2 players can be doing a lot of the significant moves and the meatiness of what they're doing while the other player is going. And that's really how the lightning fast turnarounds go. So let's collect our income. Actually, I forgot that. I was going to sign off there, but let's collect our income. So we are in now turn 3. As soon as we flip that, we cannot do any non-combat movements anymore. We spent 21 IPCs on the 3 transports. Let's put that away. But first we have to adjust the income tracker. So in China Japan took over 4 territories. So 1, 2, 3, 4, collecting 30, and China goes down. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're at 8. Let's collect that money. So 30 plus 10. I'm using my NO cards here. All these grayscale on the back, they don't have, but this one here, Trade with America, they do get. So with the 30 on the income tracker plus that national objective, it's 40 plus our 5 IPCs back. So 45 IPCs to spend next turn. So 45 is pretty good. I mean, we're not going to get rich right away off the turn 1 just simply because we have not gobbled up enough territories yet, but with that 10 IPC national objective, and it's even going to come into play even more, right? Like I said, I mean, there are positives for Japan, and that restriction of the national objective on UK Pacific is huge. But also too, if the UK Pacific decides to declare war and collect their own national objective, we're pretty much guaranteed to have the 10. So any territories that we gobble up, Borneo, Malaya, Hong Kong, that's all going to be added to the 10 IPCs Trade with America, and we can go ahead and do some more things against the UK Pacific and still keep America out of the war. So America, I mean, UK Pacific will have a hard choice if they want to collect that 15 IPCs to put them in the 40 plus bracket, but it would pretty much guarantee these vulnerable territories plus the 10 IPCs handing over to Japan. So it's not all doom and gloom, but we have to be careful of what we do with Japan as far as consequences go, like the Manchurian rule, or sorry, the Mongolian rule, and like bringing in the Pacific allies. All right, guys, cheers. Hope you enjoyed that. May all your rolls be ones. Take care. And next is UK Europe.